So we're going to look at what I think is the most famous prog rock song of all time. Not only that, it seems to have an infinite life. I guess it's been played on TikTok 220 million times. So it's evergreen. The guitar player, a big rock star in a big rock band, did something very unusual and unique. He has done the majority of his work with a clean or edge of breakup sound. You will know exactly who this is. Okay, so it's a pretty cool story. Apparently, it was in 1971. The band Yes was traveling from Aberdeen to Glasgow, Scotland. They were supporting the Yes album. And Anderson and Howe were in the back of a van, John Anderson and Steve Howe. Anderson was smoking some reefer, getting inspired. They hit 40-plus roundabouts. You know, those circles where you have to drive around them and be careful of cars? Not only that, it was a really, I guess, grand day weather-wise. The clouds were kind of settling on tops of the mountains, so he was really inspired to write these lyrics. They got to their hotel, continued the songwriting. A little later, they went in the studio. Now, they did a lot of records really quickly back then. So this was their fourth record, and they did a record, it seems like, once a year. They had very little time to write, so they had to write on the road. So they got into the studio and they did 4 band songs and 5 individual tracks. Now, the reason they did those 5 individual tracks, they didn't have time to finish the record. So the solution was for everybody to write a song and kind of do their song fantasy on the record. Another thing was they were sharing pretty equally back then. This song is a really great example of big, strong, like powerful musicians with egos and talent and ability all collaborating and sharing and being generous. It's a really good example of that. So they had to get this record done quickly, and the 4 band songs are really amazing. Now, Steve Howe actually wrote a lot of great lines in the band Yes, and he would give the lines to other musicians. I'm going to show you another song in just a second that has great lines that I think Steve Howe is responsible for. Steve used on this song an ES5 Switchmaster from 1961. Not his typical 175 that he's famous for. He actually did most of this record with an ES5 Switchmaster. The acoustic part on this song was a 1953 Martin 0018. Chris Squire doubled the bass line by borrowing one of Steve's guitars. You don't really hear it, but I suppose it adds a lot of definition. So anyway, they were enamored with American R&B bands. Okay, this blows me away. They wanted to be as tight as James Brown's band. They wanted to be as tight as Booker T and the MGs. And the bass line was inspired by Sly and the Family Stone. So you have this British prog rock band that's inspired by American R&B and wanting to play as tight as these other bands. So let me show you this other song that I love. So I found a film clip that I want you guys to look at. It's from 2017. It's Yes's induction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they're playing Roundabout live, and they're really bringing it. I mean, it's pretty great. Geddy Lee from Rush is playing bass, and he drives the song with his bass in a pretty cool way. Before we look at it, I want to remind you, we're giving away a brand new collection of 30 free guitar lessons. Click the link below for instant access. Let's look at this film. Sounds just as good as the record. Listen how tight the bass and drums are. Trevor Rabin. And this moment, listen to the bass. Double time on the drums. Now check out how strong this is. Geddy Lee. I mean, it's all there. So I found out that Steve Howe actually auditioned for Jethro Tull before joining Yes. And the reason he didn't take the gig, I guess he got the gig, but he didn't take it because there was no writing opportunities. Apparently, Ian Anderson writes all the music in Jethro Tull, and Steve Howe wanted to be a writer in any band that he was in. Anyway, we did this for the masterclass yesterday. We have live streams for the masterclass, and they're private, and they last a long time. They go about an hour. Talked about a lot of stuff, and somebody asked yesterday about when you're an adult and you're trying to learn guitar, what's the best way to start? And my suggestion was make sure there's a guitar around you all the time. Wear a guitar on a strap that's lightweight. Walk around with it. Watch TV with it. You can talk on your earbuds on the phone while you're practicing. Do anything you can to get 5 minutes here, 15 minutes there, 30 minutes here. And then, if you want to learn stuff, go to YouTube. I mean, all the best. Like, honestly, when I had to learn these two songs, the first thing I did was I went to YouTube. And there are some wrong tutorials on these two songs on YouTube. But you figure that out, and your ear can kind of tell you if somebody's missing a note or whatever. So those were my suggestions. One other thing, I don't know if you guys, any of you, have ringing in your ears. I mean, most older musicians end up with tinnitus. I certainly have it. I got it as a little kid because I had an allergy, so it doesn't really bother me that much because I've had it all my life. But it does get worse over time, and it is a form of hearing loss. I have a friend I met. I was in the parking lot at Norm's Rare Guitars. I met this guitar player, and it turns out he's in the kind of hearing instrument business. And he sent me an instrument that Steve Lukather uses. These are Steve Lukather's endorsed ear systems. And I'm just trying them. It's like I wear them when I go out to dinner. I'm kind of on the fence. I'm kind of 50-50. I went and got my ears tested. Don't exactly need them now, but they're kind of a pleasure. Listening to music in the car, being in a restaurant. Reason I'm saying, if you have any hearing issues, my friend Michael, there's a link below. Just contact him and start the conversation because the technology is getting amazing and the prices are going down. So that's just a little aside for those of you who might have tinnitus or any hearing loss. So anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. Oh, and I'll show you a couple of things on this song. Let me turn my delay off, which is always a good thing. So this, it's kind of hard to control. If you listen to the record, that is the acoustic part. The electric guitar does something like this. And it's a cleaner tone. I like much more dirty tones than Steve Howe. And that reminds me of Love Machine, or is that what it's called? It's like this R&B song from the 80s. Is that what it's called?
Miracles.
The Miracles. And then I go back to what I found. Steve Howe said this in an interview. They were trying to emulate these American R&B bands. Pretty amazing. And I found this. You really have to mute it to keep it under control on electric. And then this part, Steve wrote this line. It's kind of demanding to get that fast, but Steve commented about how he would write these lines and then give them to the other musicians. So it's a pretty collaborative effort, that whole thing. One thing that I found is on this record, I was actually amazed at the story of how the reason there are 5, like, personal songs on this record is because they didn't have time to do anything else. They did 4 band songs, and then everybody hustled up their own, vignette, their own song. And the Chris Squire one is amazing to play over. Check this out. Turn my delays back on. Pretty fun, right? I did a video on Trevor Rabin's kind of influence on Yes, and I featured Owner of a Lonely Heart and one other song. And he called me about a month later, and we had a wonderful conversation. And man, he is an amazing guitar player. He plays circles around me. He's amazing, and he's scored like 80 major motion pictures. It's never been a problem for me to use direct recording devices. I mean, I love my Fractal FM9. You guys know I love the Tonex. I have friends who get great sounds out of the Line 6 stuff. So, yeah, it's. But live, I would even if I love a unit that gets great tones, a direct recording unit, a modeler or profiler in the studio, it's a great tool. You'd never know, after you listen to the song. I would still use an amp live because somehow it projects the impact, the size is there. So yeah. But the idea is, I mentioned this in an interview lately, gear is transportation, music's the destination. I don't care what you drove here in as long as you got here. And these are just tools. Use anything you want to make your music. And a lot of people criticize gear these days. They love to criticize gear, but those of us who've had to make a living in the music business, we could never really afford to do that because you would find out that Def Leppard did all their guitar tones with a Rockman, and that was the truth. And then you would go, okay, I can't ignore that. I have to have all these sounds. They're all tools, and just find the tools that work for you, and then make music, because music is the destination and gear is the transportation. One more pass on the fish. I think that's what it's called, right? Anyway, Jeff McElwain is with us, I guess, and Pipe Dream is with us. Rob Page. Rob Page makes the Chopsticks bass. Check it out if you want a great bass for guitar players. And check out Jeff McElwain if you want a great guitar teacher. I looked at one of Jeff McElwain's videos this morning talking about the pentatonic scale. And he was saying the way to actually make it unique and better. I mean, I just skimmed it, but he showed me this thing. He showed me on YouTube. He went like this. So if you're playing blues, I'm going to give you a Jeff McElwain lessons for 30 seconds. Jeff says, if you're playing blues, you can use the same notes you would use in blues, but use them more like an arpeggio. So you're going... Well, take the pentatonic scale and do something like this. Do it with authority. Make it like a sentence to where you're doing pick dynamics. And you've got a lick that sounds bluesy but is more interesting. So Jeff, that lesson is Jeff's newest video, so go check it out. I did. I took his lesson this morning. Isn't that amazing? Anyway, one more little play over the fish. I wanted to try Jeff's lick, and it sounded good, right? I just brought it up to E minor, and it sounded really, really good. Jasmine, you're talking about the Karma ODR10 pedal. I'm glad you call it. You love my Karma ODR10 pedal. Well, it's funny. I gave him one of mine, Greg, and he spent like a year developing it, and it is. I have to say, it's perfect. I was saying yesterday to the masterclass members in our private live stream that I didn't want to promote it heavily because I wanted the world to tell everybody that it was a good pedal rather than just me, because I had so much to do with it. And I don't make a dime off of it. It's just him and his pedals. But I wanted the world to actually tell us if it was good or not, and the world has. I mean, Corey Congilio got one, and he was going, wow. He has that switcher where you can switch. I guess JHS makes this really great switcher where you can switch midstream. You don't hear anything. And he switched it between the real one and the Karma, and he was like, oh, wow, it's identical. Or something like that. You'd have to watch the video. But the world has decided it's a good pedal, and I'm happy about that because I honestly believe this. I don't think anybody should have to pay too much money for a holy grail item that's not available anywhere. I think everybody should have access to the same tools. I mean, kind of when I grew up, we all had access to the same tools. It's just there weren't very many of them, and they were super expensive. These days, people complain about prices with gear, but the prices on gear when I grew up were all high. There were only high-priced pieces of gear, and we had to save up and get the one guitar. The other thing I talked about at length yesterday, I love delays when I'm playing along with the track because you don't hear them. The thing about delays, and the way I use delays, is that they make the guitar float. I love the way they make a guitar sound, but I never want to hear them. So let me give you an example here. I'm going to play just for a second. Okay, if I sustain that last note, you don't hear trails. You don't necessarily know that the delays are there. But if I'm playing by myself, it gets annoying quick to hear. Right? So I always turn them off when I play by myself, unless I forget, like I just did. But the way I use delay is I hide it. It sinks into the music and it disappears. And that to me is the goal. I don't want to hear trails. I don't want to hear delays. I just want them to make my guitar float as I move my hands. And I'll see you guys on the next live stream. I'm going to play us out by playing along. And I'm going to sneak in Jeff's riff. But here come the delays. So see if you can see my my trick here, my ploy here, my illusion, where I play, but you never hear the delay. It just makes the guitar sound spacious. Just imagine the hands moving through the air. Anyway, guys, see you on the next one. Thanks so much for this. It's been awesome.